Hello everyone, my name is 𝗧𝗦𝗧𝗘𝗧𝗧𝗘. Welcome back to another video in the series Namaste Google Cloud. In this video, I will go through the virtual private cloud in GCP, how to set it up, what are the subnets, firewall rules, and so on. It is important to understand the concept before implementing it. That is why I have included a presentation to give you a walkthrough of VPC and its component, followed by a demo on how to set it up. Please watch the complete video as I will be doing some knowledge checks at the end with some sample exam questions if you are planning for Associate Cloud Engineer certification. If you are new to my channel, please hit the subscribe button below and don't forget to hit the bell icon to get notified about all my upcoming videos. Without further ado, let's get into it. VPC network is a logically isolated network on Google Cloud Platform. You can think of a VPC the same way you would think of a physical network, except that it is virtualized within Google Cloud. A VPC is contained in a project, which again is a part of Google Cloud Platform. Each VPC network consists of one or more IP range called subnets or subnetworks. For instance, US West 1 could have one subnet, which is subnet 1, and US East 1 could have two subnets, subnet 2 and subnet 3. Subnets are regional resource and have IP addresses associated with them. For example, over here, if you could see, subnet 1 has this IP range and subnet 2 and 3 has their own IP ranges. Please make sure you select the IP ranges carefully. If you like to know more about how to calculate IPs in a subnet range and what is a subnet mask, then feel free to check out the video that I published for the same. I will put the link in the description section as well as in the title bar. Also, you can use this online tool. I'll put the link again in the description section. And there is a utility called subnet calculator along with it. So you can just put in your IP range over here. Let's say our subnet 1's IP range, which is 192.168.1.0. And we have selected the subnet mask as /24. So here it is. You can select any subnet mask. So again, this calculation, how you can calculate it manually, I have given in the video that I was talking about. /24 will have 256 IP addresses. You can select any other range as well. And when you enter it, just hit calculate. So it will populate the IP range for you. The first address being 192.168.1.0 and the last one would be 192.168.1.255. Even though it says it has 256 IP addresses, but there'll be few IP addresses in this range or in every CIDR range that is reserved by Google Cloud for future purposes. So please make sure you understand that as well. Okay, so this is the way how we can check our IP range. Alright, so we have selected the IP range of all three subnets. If later on the IPs get exhausted, because you see each of these range that we have selected would have 256 IP addresses. Let's say in future at some point of time you would need more IP addresses to a particular subnet or one or more subnet. You could just edit this subnet or any subnet and extend the range. Let's say currently it is /24 mask. You could just edit it to have more IP addresses /23 subnet mask you can use, or anything less than that. It will give you more IP addresses. Just keep in mind you can only extend the IP range, but you cannot delete it and you cannot shrunk the IP addresses. Now, when you provision a compute instance, you select the zone in which it must be provisioned. And the region that you select for a resource determine the subnet that it can use. So in this example, when you provision 2 GCE instance in zone US West A, it determines that the region is US West 1 and this US West 1 region has only one subnet with this IP range. So these two instances will have the IP in this range. Let's say it could be 192.168.1.5 for this instance, and for this instance it could be 192.168.1.12. So this is how the IP will be selected for these two. Similarly, when you provision instances in US East 1, they will be part of subnet 2 and subnet 3. And they have the IP from that CIDR range that they are part of. If you are confused about the difference between zone and region, so just keep that in mind, that zone is nothing but a collection of data centers in a geographical location, and region is a collection of multiple zones that are located miles apart. But why do we need region and zone separately? So we deploy a workload in multiple zones and regions to attain high availability and fault tolerance. So let's say we have deployed our workload in this region as well as this region. Let's say due to some natural disaster or anything, this complete region goes down, then your application will still be available through this particular region. So this is how we have attained high availability and fault tolerance with deploying our workload in multiple regions. So after you create a network, you can create firewall rules to allow or deny traffic between resources in the network, such as communication between VM instances. You also use firewall rules to control what traffic leaves or enter the VPC network to and from the internet. Firewall rules are defined at VPC network level, but you can associate it with one or more instances. There are two types of rules. You can create an inbound rule or an outbound rule, which is also referred to as ingress or egress rules. Inbound, as the name suggests, restrict the inbound traffic on a certain port from a certain source or from the internet. And the same way, outbound restrict the outbound traffic on a certain port to a certain destination. By default, there are two implied firewall rules created, one which allows all outgoing connections and another that denies all incoming connection. Again, these two rules have the lowest priority of 6535. So you can easily override these rules by creating a lower priority rule, let's say 65400, and this rule will be evaluated first and then this rule be evaluated. So let's say this rule has allowed the outgoing connections with this particular priority, right? And you want to deny that rule. So you could just create a deny rule with this priority, and this rule evaluated first and the connection will be denied. This rule would not even be evaluated. But you can just override these rules by creating a lower priority rules, and you cannot edit or delete these rules as these are implied rules. By default, instances on a same VPC can talk to each other with their private IP. So these all instances can talk to each other using their private IP. They don't have to access their public IP because they are within the same network. Like every instance has the connectivity with each other. But you can also create a firewall rule to deny the connection, let's say between the instances of subnet 2 and subnet 3. Now there is another important thing, which is VPC routing. VPC routing defines the network path that packets take to travel from source to destination. Any incoming traffic, like what is the destination of it, what would be the next hop, how it will traverse from one location to another, right? And how would the outgoing traffic would go from one location to another. So this all will be defined with the help of VPC routing, and entries would be created in route table for the same, right? We will have a look at this routing in the next video where we'll be discussing about VPC peering. Let's head over to the demo and see everything in action. All right, so let's head over to your Google Cloud Console and search for VPC networks over here. You click on that and you will see there is a default VPC already created for you when you have provisioned your project. And you will also see there are subnets created in each of the available region over here, right? So this is what a default VPC does. It by default creates the subnets in all the regions that is available, and they have a unique IP range. You could use this VPC as well, but there is a caveat to it. If you have an on-prem server, or if you are planning on connecting your on-prem server in the future with this particular project, or if you have other VPCs or you will be creating multiple VPCs, then there is a chance that these IP ranges could overlap with your other IP ranges. So this default VPC and default subnet range are good for your learning and POC purpose, but it is not recommended to run your production workload. So this is the default. Click over here, create VPC network. Once you do that, you could just give it a name. Let's call it my VPC. Description, this is not a mandatory field, so you could just leave it blank as well. And then if you scroll down, it says subnet creation mode. So there are two type of creation mode with VPC, custom or automatic. If you select the automatic mode, then again it will do the same thing. It will create subnets in each of the available regions, which is what we don't want. And you can choose the custom mode as well. So with custom mode, you could add your own subnet. There is no subnet created for you. So you could just click on new subnet, give it a name. Let's call it subnet 1. Select the region. I'll select the same region, US West 1 and US East 1 for the other one, US West 1. There is a IP stack mode. So subnet works in both the modes, single stack or dual stack. Single stack, it'll only have the IPv4 address range, and for dual stack, it'll have IPv4 and IPv6 range as well. So for now, I'll just select the single stack and provide the name that we have already selected, 192.168.1.0/24. We'll have 256 IP. We could additionally create secondary IP range as well. Done. So our first subnet is there. Let's create second subnet, subnet 2. This time I'll select the region as US West 1. I'll give the IP range as 10.1.0.0/24. Done. And I'll create my third subnet as well. Region is again US West 1. We can create more than one subnet in a particular region. One is already created by default if we are using the automatic mode, but because we are using the custom mode, there was no subnets created automatically. So 10.2.0.0/24. All right, I'll click on done. Right, so we have specified 3 subnets to be created. Now firewall rules. So there are some default IPv4 firewall rules created for you. First one is the ingress rule, which allows incoming connection from all the IP ranges that we have locally. So these are all the private IP ranges that we have set. That means all the VMs within our VPC will have incoming connection between each other on all the ports. Again, the priority is the lowest. You can override this priority if you want to deny any access. Then second one is ICMP, allowed from outside the internet. That means anyone over the internet could ping your instance. Anyone could RDP your instance if they have the keys, and anyone could SSH to your instance if they have the login credentials. And then we have a VPC deny all access. That means all other ports are denied other than these that have been specified, because you see the rule priority is the lowest. First, these rules will be evaluated, which has the higher priority, and then these two rules will be evaluated. So this will deny the access on all other ports that have been specified. So this will just deny the access on the ports that have not been specified over here. And then there is a egress allowed. That means instances within your VPC can connect to the internet. Then I'll just leave these fields as default and hit on create. Now this will create a VPC. It will take a couple of minutes. If you go down, your VPC is getting provisioned. So I'll just pause the video till it's getting created. All right, my VPC has been created now. So you see, this is the VPC and 3 subnets have been created with the IP ranges that I have specified. If we go to my VPC, it has all the details. So with VPC, it comes with another few components. So it'll have some static internal IP if we have reserved it. If not, you can reserve it from here. This is just like Elastic IP in AWS. We have static external IPs as well in GCP. So you could just reserve static internal or external IP and associate with any of your instance. Then we have routes over here. So it has a default local route to the subnet so that the instances can communicate with each other. So there'll be 3 routes for that. And there is one route to the internet so that all the instances within our VPC can communicate to the internet. And these all details will look in the later sections when we cover VPC network peering. So we have firewall rules over here. Because we did not selected any of the default rules, that is why it's not there. Only the implicit rules will be applied, which is not visible. So we could just add the rule from here, add firewall rule. Okay, let's give it a name, allow SSH, and the network is my VPC network. That is fine. This is a type of ingress rule and action should be allowed. Then you specify your target tags. Let's give it a tag. Let's call it dev server. So this rule will be applied to all the servers that have a tag called dev server. I'll show you how it will match it. Then it has IPv4 ranges. So source IPv4 ranges, let's give it to everything. Then allowed on a particular protocol, let's call it TCP port 22 so that I should be able to SSH to it. And that's it, just verify everything and hit create. All right, so now you would see the firewall rules created over here. If you expand this, this is allow SSH rule, which is the ingress rule. As I've mentioned before, firewall rules applied at VPC network level, but you can associate it with one or more instances. So now let's go to our GCE compute engine and provision a GCE service. Hit on create instance. If you are not familiar with GCP, I have also created a video for that. So feel free to check that out. I'll again put the link in the description section as well as in the title bar. So let's call it test VM1. I use the default zone. I use the small machine type, something like E2 micro. And then I'll go down. So the rest of the section, I'll just keep it default for now. And the main is this one, advanced option, and that networking. Okay, here you mention the network tag. So I'll just mention dev server. Then you select the network interface, which is the default one attached to it. So you select the network, my VPC. This is the custom VPC that we have created. And then you select the subnetwork. Now you see, this is what I wanted to show you. It says no subnetwork in this region. So you don't have anything and it is grayed out. You cannot select. This is why, because we have not created any subnet in US Central 1 region, right? So this region, if you remember, I've told you if we select the zone, it will determine the region based on that. And based on that, it will determine which subnet the instance should be part of. But because we don't have anything in this particular zone or region, that is why it is giving us the error. So let's just select region as US West 1, Oregon region, and zone is US West 1A. Okay, and now if you scroll down, you see it auto populated the subnet 1 details. Okay, so that's it. You click on done and hit create. All right, our VM has been provisioned And if you see the internal IP, this is within the range that we have selected for that particular subnet. So let's click on the VM and do SSH into it. So it is transferring the SSH key to the VM and establishing the connection. Right, I am in. Let's clear the screen and do ping on google.com. I'm getting the reply from google.com. This is because there is a default route to the internet gateway, and this is what we wanted to test. All right, time for a quick knowledge check of what we have learned so far. First question is, let's suppose you have exhausted all the IPs in your subnet A, which is hosted inside US East 1 region, inside the VPC named prod VPC. What should you do to provision more instances in subnet A? And your options are expand your VPC IP range, recreate your VPC with an extended IP range, or expand your subnet IP range. The next is, by default, VMs created in the same VPC can talk to each other using their public IP. Is that statement true or false? Let's say you have 3 firewalls rule created as below. How these will be evaluated and what is the impact? Like which rule will be evaluated first and what would be the outcome once the rule is evaluated? Whether you have allowed access or denied access, what would be the impact of these 4 rules when attached to a GCE instance? Your default VPC gets created with one subnet in each of the available regions. Is that statement true or false? VPC can be created at zone level as well. Is that statement true or false? The last one is, you can apply single firewall rule with multiple GCE instances. Is that statement true or false? All right, so if you know the answer of these questions, let me know in the comment section below. And if you have any difficulty understanding any of these concepts that we have discussed so far, and feel free to reach out and I will be more than happy to help you out. That's it for this video, guys. I hope you would have learned something from it, and I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please like the video, share it with your friends, colleagues, family members, and keep watching the series. There are many more videos in the pipeline. I will see you soon with the next video. Till then, take care, keep learning.